This session is titled Public-Private Partnership: Future of Disaster Assistance. You know, one of the things that I think emergency management does well is doing that mutual aid between localities and between states, which, you know, it makes sense. The resources are closer to home. They're easier to deploy. We all get to help our neighbors. It allows us in the emergency management profession to retain our proficiency by working on somebody else's disaster. So we get the experience of and can bring that back to our own jurisdictions. It's often less expensive for us to go with a neighboring municipality or state than it would be to hire somebody outside. It's faster than waiting for the federal government to come in to assist us. So that's a good model. What we want to talk about today is where can we go with that model? What does the future of that assistance look like? Can we expand it both on the government side, and is there any applicability to the private side? And if so, what can we do to help facilitate that? So that's really where we want to start this thing off. Is, you know, I'd love to hear thoughts from panelists in the audience as to what is the future of disaster assistance, and what can we do as government to help facilitate that? So I'll open it up, and I'll start off with Daniel, actually, who said he had some. They're going through that right now. Daniel?
Well, I mentioned this yesterday, and the question is, how can we get businesses to work together during a disaster? Escambia and Santa Rosa County came together and started a business continuity initiative. We call it the Escarosa Business Continuity Initiative. And we call it Escarosa, play on both county names, because Santa Escambia just doesn't sound very good. So Tom Cerro earlier had talked about the program they have in South Florida and how they wish they had known that they had local resources and they weren't shipping stuff from outside the state. And that was our intent also, is getting our businesses to work together in a two-county area so that we don't have to ask the state to ship us widgets just because we didn't know widgets were next door. We'd rather keep our money local. And I think that's the intent of this, is let's keep your money local. The disaster's local, keep your money local. And it's a pretty decent, on the safersantarosa.org webpage, we have a model of how we organize the BCI. It's replicable. Everything we've done in the Panhandle is replicable. We've been copied by other counties, some of the things we do here in Florida. And I just think that if you take the time to look at some of the models that are out there, and I'm just going to tell you our model is a good one because it's replicated, I think that you'd find some benefit. But it's all about motivation. You got to bring people to the table. We brought every chamber in the two-county area to the table with big businesses like our Gulf Power and whatnot, and we just were committed to saying, this is what we're going to do. These are our citizens, our businesses, our money. Let's make it work for us, and we did so far. Chirp, chirp. I'm done. Thank you.
Just a question for you on that. Just a little more information on what does that model look like in terms of, does it integrate that business side, and how so?
All right. When we first started, we made a lot of mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes trying to do a business compact. And so I'll tell you what ours was. The first thing I did was I got with my chambers and I said, hey, let's share all of your data with a chamber in the next county. Chamber directors, is that a good idea? Okay, chamber director in the front row here going like this. Well, that's what I got. It was a little bit more abusive. So what we decided was, okay, they don't want to share their membership. That's not proprietary, but, well, maybe it is a little bit. But I'm a government guy. What do I know about business? I'm just trying to facilitate it. So thought, okay, we got to come up with something else. Well, each of our counties has a COAD, Community Organizations Active in Disaster. Escambia County has a COAD called BRACE, Be Ready Alliance Coordinating for Emergencies, and Santa Rosa has Safer Santa Rosa, Support Alliance for Emergency Readiness. So we thought, well, our chambers are already COAD members. We'll have the COADs as the point of contacts. Our COADs work at ESF 15 and have the capability of working at 18, and ESF 18 can talk across county lines with trusted agents. That way we're not sharing information, but we can ask questions. So the front row here is my Escambia counterpart. If I go to my chambers and I can't find blue widgets, then I'll go through our 18, talk to his 18, and ask them if they can check with their chambers to see if they got blue widgets. And if they got blue widgets, our problem solved. If we don't have blue widgets, but we tried to keep it local, then we'll go to EM Constellation and ask Brian to find us blue widgets. You got any blue widgets? And that's how the model is. And there's a diagram of the model on the Safer webpage under the business continuity link on the left-hand side. And you guys are welcome to look at that. But our COADs are our proprietary, not proprietary, but our holders of county information, and they work very well together, and that protects the chambers. It's that level of protection, because the chambers said to me, listen, not that we don't trust them, but we trust you. We'll talk to you and give you our information, but we don't want to give it away across county lines. So that's how we solved that problem, is we had that intermediary of a public-private partnership as the trusted agent, and then the public-private partnerships talk. Make sense? Questions?
Rick Berman, South Florida Disaster Resiliency Coalition. Question for you is, how long has your organization been in existence?
We started in 2008. Embrace started in 2006. And we looked at their model and said, that's an awesome model. Let's see if we can create something similar. And we felt our way through.
Because we're in the process of trying to evolve into a more of an integrated organization, but we're involved with 4 counties, 3 of which have their own personalities, or all 4 of them do, but Miami-Dade, Broward County, and Palm Beach County are all large entities in themselves, and they all have individual personalities, and we're trying to figure out the best way to grow it through the business community, and we really have never reached out strongly to the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm trying to find out, again, the personalities you have, they're competitive with each other in these regions. And
but they're smart
that's one
enough
of
to
our
see
concerns.
the benefit of cooperation. There's several chambers. There's a Pensacola Chamber representative here who's hiding his name tag right now. And I welcome comments from him as well. I don't want to be, I'm just a government guy. I've got chambers from both counties here who can speak to the benefit of this or the detriment of it if they want to shoot me down. Please don't.
Does anybody from the chambers have any comments about getting involved in these partnerships?
Yeah, Scott Luke with Pensacola Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, we were, again, very excited about the opportunity because, again, we saw it as a service to basically provide support to our chamber businesses. That's why we really kind of embrace this opportunity to look at, how are we going to help our companies that are members, but not only members, but also that we're non-members, that helps our business community. So while we focus a lot on our chamber members for communication, we did look at the community as a whole. We also said, well, we're providing the service, we're working across county lines, we're making sure that our businesses come back. That's going to help our economy. So our particular Chamber of Commerce saw it as our role. In fact, we are the ESF 18 point of contact for Escambia County as the Chamber of Commerce because we have a built-in Rolodex of companies that actually reside within our area, and we see that as a service to our members and non-members as well. So we encourage it. Again, we also look at our base. A lot of our members have businesses in both counties. We are an MSA from the economy standpoint. And so that's another reason why we joined together, especially with our partner county in Santa Rosa, to look at this. What are we going to do from an education standpoint, from a during storm standpoint, and obviously from a recovery standpoint, how do we support our business community? And that's really why we endorse it from that perspective. But you're right about the membership. We do kind of keep that, the members that we have, we kind of keep that internal, and that really did kind of help out about feeding that through the agencies across county lines. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to try.
Brad here is the emergency management planner for Escambia County.
And I think a part of that, which is what his primary job is, revolves around bringing businesses to the community. And if they're an integral part of that process, they understand that process and can better explain the preparedness level that the communities have to those prospective businesses rather than them taking that surface, well, you guys have hurricanes all the time, we're not coming there. They have the insight and the inside knowledge of how the system works, the process works, the preparedness works, so they can better communicate with those prospective businesses that are looking to come here as well. So there's a benefit on a lot of different levels for their participation.
So I wanted to share just a concept A lot of times when you've got an emergency, I think there's a real focus on sort of the critical infrastructure, hospitals, transportation, power, et cetera. And I just wanted to share just a quick story about the freak snowstorm in Connecticut in 2012. It was just before Halloween. Trees were still filled with leaves. A number of you have heard me complain about the fact that when the power went out, Starbucks was not considered an essential service, so you couldn't get coffee the next day. But we have two towns. I live in the town of Avon. It's about a population of 13,000 people. And the next town is the town of Simsbury. And Simsbury had not only done a lot of the preparation around sort of the critical infrastructure, but they had done a lot of discussions with local businesses on more of a personal level. And they had engaged restaurants and other types of organizations, smaller mom and pop shops. So we were without power. We had 18 inches of snow. We lost power within about 5-6 hours of the snowstorm starting. We were without power for about 10 days. And Avon had done no preparation for this. We were the second to last town to get power back on. Simsbury was the last town to get power back on. They came on about a day after us. However, having said that, the people in Avon were extremely jealous of the people in Simsbury because they had talked to all the local restaurants. So they had warming stations and warming places set up. They delivered hot meals. Each of the local restaurants were serving meals in the warming stations. It wasn't MREs. So you'd go in and one of the nicest French restaurants was serving food. They had set up a number of things where you could recharge cell phones and stuff like that. But they also had hot showers and other things that they had sort of engaged and tried to make sure that people were aware of where they could go. And they had local businesses that were not deemed essential services, but they actually had a bunch of massage therapists giving out massages in the gyms in Simsbury. And point of this is that it was a very difficult, uncomfortable situation for 10 days, no power, obviously trying to get it. The governor was having 2 or 3 day daily briefings. But what the town of Simsbury did was they engaged the non-traditional actors and tried to get them to prepare for, and they made a very uncomfortable situation less uncomfortable by engaging with them in advance.
Please don't ever tell that story in Florida again. I don't want people expecting massages and French food during a hurricane.
You said they had those relationships established in advance, so they had thought of massage therapy and the restaurant delivery. And
they had gone out to smaller businesses and said, we're preparing for different things, and they have a much more inclusive government, and they're known for being a much more progressive town than the town that I live in. They've got bike paths, and they've got a focus on renewable energy and solar PVs and stuff like that. They've just got a much more inclusive type of atmosphere in the town.
I'm just thinking, and I was going to throw this back out to the chambers, one of the questions that I have, I happen to work for a company that we specialize in the disaster recovery arena. So we're one of the folks that comes in wherever it is in the country after the fact, and or during the fact, or before the fact if you want to be prepared. But particularly our focus is that recovery component. And one of the things that we see, we work a lot with the FEMA Public Assistance Program, so obviously a lot of our specific audiences, the local government entities and other related jurisdictions, hospitals, school districts, et cetera. But I am curious, particularly hearing these conversations over today and yesterday, how much the model that the public sector has taken on to prepare, for instance, pre-event contracts. We've talked a lot over the course of these sessions about communication, the conversations that can take place ahead of time, just the critical relationship building component that has to happen beforehand. Or, who said it? Where's Dave? As his father said, don't want to make a friend when you need a friend, do that before. How much is the business sector looking at that model of pre-event contracting, finding out what your resources are ahead of time? What are some of the questions that we should be asking beforehand? And not necessarily waiting for the public sector to drive that, but looking at what are the business-to-business relationships. And I think that's one of the things we were looking at talking about here, so I thought this would be a good place to bring that up. But maybe the chambers have some insight into the conversations that are taking place on the emergency management realm in the private sector?
I would say that our enterprise level businesses take preparedness seriously. Small to medium-sized businesses that have not been through a disaster, not so much. So it's a lesson learned in the planning for the next. But then on the whole, I would say that the small to medium-sized businesses are less proactive.
And I'll add from the, we do a lot with supply chain providers, and so where we're seeing this is in the risk management space. And supply chain risk management has certainly evolved over the past, just 4 years now since the Japan triple, disaster, where we saw the global effects. But one of the things that we're starting to see emerge from this is, yes, at the enterprise level, businesses are prepared, but now they're starting to push it back down to those small and medium-sized businesses who are part of their supply chains, building it into contracts. And I think from, this group's perspective, we can say be prepared all you want, but until there's a carrot and a stick for a reason to be prepared, we're never gonna kindle that fire to get it going.
It's funny you say that. I actually had that carrot concept written down because on the public sector side, we didn't really see movement on it until you started, or FEMA started tying potential funding to preparedness activities and pre-event contracting. So I was thinking, is there a way to replicate that within the business community? Maybe not, but
yeah, you don't get, if you get a contract if, or you get an incentive. I know there's some insurance, carrots out there for businesses who do have preparedness activities ongoing. But that's the only way. I think there's a balance, You can ask my 17-year-old daughter if the carrot stick, philosophy works, but.
Daniel, are you going to perform?
This is our business continuity page. And playing off of what Tony said and what Kathy just said, this is horrible, you can't see it, but this is the model for our BCI. Whoa. That scared me, dude. So the BCI comes down into grace and safer, and then we've got our committees and our chambers. They talk together here, and then it comes down to all the members, all the businesses, regardless of whether they're chamber members or not. We try and give them a say and let them funnel information out, because everybody's got great ideas. And if you scroll the page, stop there. Blow it up a little bit. Stop. This is it's not really a carrot, because I like that conversation, but we created these. You can see we've got businesses that paid to have their logo put on these. So we hand 3,000 of these out amongst a couple counties, and they're getting free advertising, and they only pay $500,000 or whatever. So they're getting advertisement to other businesses, and we do both sides. And we put business continuity information in them. And the concept that we were trying to use is, I can tell this business guy, hey man, you need to have a business continuity plan. You really need to have a business continuity plan. And that's our job in emergency management, is communication. How do we communicate the idea? Well, now I'm giving him something cool. I'm saying, hey, this orange bag's really cool. It's got stuff inside it. Here's all your clues. It asks about vendors. It does all this other stuff. All you have to do is go down this checklist. I've taken the horse to water. I still can't make the horse drink, but I didn't just point to the water. I've taken him now to the water. We get him that one step closer, and we're hoping that in our two-county area, at least if they're close to the water, some more will drink than would not have if we had not have done this initiative. We're not doing this again because the trend now is all cloud-based stuff. So we're going to have to find a way to influence people to update their data and keep their vendors cloud-based. And I'm not a technology guy. I'm like our Salvation Army buddy who's much more wise than I am with technology. But this was a great idea, and I stole this in 2006 from Hillsborough County. So, big borrow, steal ideas. Oh my God, sorry. I didn't mean to do the preacher thing.
All right, so we've got the Escarosa, we've got South Florida Disaster Coalition, we've got Chambers of Commerce, we've got DEO, Small Business Administration, our outreach stuff. Is there anything that's missing Is there anything that's duplicative that needs to get rid of? Is there anything that needs to be enhanced? I'm going to start on this side, and I'll come over to you, Steve. Yes, sir.
I want to kind of spin off what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. About 10 years ago, I served as a statewide chief of administration for juvenile justice, and of course I was there during the ravaging of 5 hurricanes throughout Florida. And thank goodness 2 years prior, through the Division of Emergency Management, went through these training sessions and planning sessions and came up with some strategies, not only to deal with other agencies, other levels of government, interagency issues. With juvenile justice, of course, we had the logistics of having a sensitive population, at-risk kids, and various levels of commitment and security. And basically, we came up with some contracts to address issues. We did some inspections, and you get into telecommunications, you get into infrastructure and power. For example, one of the big things at the facilities, particularly in the rural areas, is the power. And upon inspections, we found that several of our emergency generators, they weren't functioning properly. So that called into question, what can we do to address this issue? We ended up doing service contracts to make sure that these generators, existing generators, that people in Tallahassee, oh, we got generators, we're covered. Well, that's great, they're not working. So we developed these service contracts. In addition, the 5 hurricanes, hurricanes are unpredictable. You think they're going here, they might go somewhere else. So we also established contracts with entities, and they can even bring in from out of state these emergency power generators, where they'll just truck them in to where they're needed. There was some discussion, well, should we start using some emergency money and agency monies to buy generators everywhere? Well, the shotgun approach is just too expensive, so what you do is you maybe do a hybrid of it. You try to identify your highest risk areas, maybe get some things in there, and then contract and have your leasing. Another thing is transportation. We had a lot of vehicles, but in times of hurricanes, we really needed the 4-wheel drive, so we collaborated with other state agencies as well as leasing companies, and again, even other states doing partnerships. Medical services, same thing. Telecommunications, there was days at a time where we just could not communicate in the field, and this was a big issue for the Secretariat. Obviously, we're responsible for the custody and care of juveniles, so we ended up doing contracts for satellite phones. It's the only thing we had at the time. So there's a lot of opportunities for, and business opportunities for private industry to collaborate with state government, federal government, local government, forming partnerships. I can go on and on, but forming partnerships with local governments. You hit the the sheriffs, the city and county commissions, the state attorney. So it's just critical to have these partnerships in place. And it was a pain in the butt 2 years prior to go through this, but boy, when those 5 hurricanes hit, I was really thankful that we did. Just a few comments.
All right. Steve?
For Miami-Dade County, we have...
Sorry, I'll get you next.
Oh.
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Okay. For Miami-Dade County, we have 2 initiatives that we've been working on. The first one, we just started about a month ago with our grocery stores and pharmacies. The one thing that we came up against is how do we deliver pharmaceuticals, medications to our shelter population? They're going to show up at the shelters. They're not going to have their medications. They're going to forget about them. Well, how do we deliver that? And the problem was the pharmacies are going to be either open or closed. How do we deliver those things? 2 of our pharmacies actually came back, 2 of our box stores came back and said, well, actually, we deploy mobile trailers. So that was one example. But through perseverance and bugging the crap out of them until they actually understood what we were talking about, most of them have agreed that they will deliver medications, whether it's through their staff or whether they're getting their POVs and driving it down, and they're going to deliver those medications to our shelters. And they also agreed that not only are they going to deliver them to the shelter, but they're also going to take orders from ESF 18. So ESF 18 will compile the information from the shelters to say, what are your medication needs for that particular shelter? We will then forward that off to our ESF 18 partners. And they also agree that they're going to deliver it not only to the customers, but also the non-customers as well, whether or not they have an account with that business. The other initiative we were just starting last year, and we're still getting going with this, is the Alliance for Response for Miami, which covers Miami-Dade and Monroe counties. It's relatively new. If anyone's familiar with the Heritage Preservation, basically we're part of that initiative where we're addressing emergency preparedness, but also emergency services for our museums, our art galleries, our libraries, our special collections. And right now they're falling within ESF 18, so they're a component of that. And it's basically more or less a collaboration among these different museums to work together during disaster and also after disaster. So like I said, we're just getting going. We have our own Facebook page, we have our own Twitter account, and we post information up on there. If anyone's interested in following us, we are posting every day on that site. It's the Alliance for Response Miami, but that's one of the other components, so we're actually kind of building that as we go. Right now, we've already had a strategic plan that's been put in place, and we're going to be focusing on building up our membership and also putting together mutual aid plans with the different institutions. A lot of them have plans. They've never had an actual need to test them. So we're going to be focusing that on, testing them probably this coming year in terms of putting their plans to the test. We did a tabletop exercise with them this past year where we actually kind of took their plans out for a walk, and it was very eye-opening for them. They had never considered credentialing. They had no idea what we were talking about, and they were just hungry for more information. So unfortunately, the state, and not to put anybody on the spot, but there hasn't been a lot done in terms of the heritage preservation sites, the museums. There hasn't been a lot of dialogue between the emergency management community and those institutions. If you have a performing arts venue or a museum in your community, I would encourage you to talk to them, because guaranteed they probably either they don't have a plan or they've never even thought about this. It's always kind of trying for me because I'm coming from the EM perspective and talking to them, and usually I get a couple blank faces like, what are you talking about, Steve? And unfortunately, I have a couple people that understand a little bit, and I can talk them through it a little bit, but that's the other thing we have going on.
Thanks, Steve. And in the audience, yes, ma'am.
And Vermont, we actually was the nonprofit that led the program up in Vermont after the flooding called Vermont Resilience. But the project that I work on is the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact down in Southeast Florida. And a lot of the climate change adaptation and mitigation work that's being done overlaps with emergency management type of work. And we're another partnership that could be formed through the nonprofits, but also climate change groups that are out there. I know in Jacksonville, there's the P2R2 group, which is a private collaborative, an organization that's working on moving businesses and people out of harm's way related to sea level rise. And then I live in Delray Beach, and I actually head up an organization called the Delray Beach Rising Waters Task Force, where we are looking at sea level rise and flooding due to extreme rain events, tidal flooding, and storm surge. And, our tagline is, deal with it. And that's gotten actually a lot of play, that we're not soft selling this, that we want to help homeowners before disaster strikes, as far as understanding what their flood insurance is, what their risks are, and what to do. So there are overlapping different organizations, whether it's nonprofits and a lot of the climate change organizations that, again, overlap with the work that the emergency management folks are doing.
I'm Greg Bacon from Manatee County. One of the things when I became the logistics chief for Manatee County Emergency Management, we just happened to be south of this great county of Pinellas. We're across the bridge. We have about 300,000 people in it. And when I got there, there really wasn't any business orientation in reference to emergency management, except for the chambers. The chambers had kind of started something to try to get an idea of who's out there. Manatee County does not have a business license, which for the business industry is great, But for the EM industry, we have no clue who is actually in Manatee County. I mean, we can drive down the street and we look at the phone books, but there are obviously a lot of businesses that are not in those particular areas because they may not deal specifically with Manatee County. So I charged my ESF 18 to come up with all these great lists and things like that. And the person, her name's Karen Stewart, who works for Manatee County under their executive, or the EDC, the Economic Development Division. She started trying to get our IT people to develop something. Lo and behold, our purchasing department already had started something. So for those of you that have don't realize, but a lot of your county purchasing departments, who happens to be our ESF 7 procurement people, they have a list of people that they're already vetting for businesses. So ESF 18 kind of tagged on to that list, put out a website saying, Manatee County is going to be looking for people that may have certain things, and we'd like you all to sign up. And if you sign up, you're going to be vetted by the county's purchasing department, so you don't have to go through that whole rigmarole during a disaster. So for those of you that are in the county field or even in the cities, use your purchasing department's information to find out who's out there, and maybe by doing websites and things like that, putting on there that, hey, if you're already vetted with Manatee County Purchasing, just so happens that there are procurement people, we will try to use you before we go outside of our counties.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
By happy coincidence, my office is in Bradenton, in Manatee County. I've met with Karen Stewart. I'm very familiar with it. I wanted to, not really contrarian point of view, but there's such an emphasis on post-disaster business-to-business, essentially, facilitation. And that's great. So if you have an event and the chamber wants to have the local office supply company, the local computer company, whatever, help the businesses get back on their feet, think about that process. How many phone calls does it take to find the resources? How are they damaged in the disaster? How long does it take to get supply delivered and set up? I want to recommend to the group, because I'm representing Agility Recovery, we are a pre-event contract solution for power, workstations, resources, technology, servers, workstations, telecommunication. It's another tool in the toolbox that should be offered as part of this public-private partnership. So we're registered, but it's so often after the event, these are the businesses that can help. Also let them know that before the event, you can also have these resources on queue, one phone call, 24, 48 hours in place, up and running, until the other businesses can really provide the long-term solution. And of course, we're available to help talk about that. That's the shameless plug. But the main thing is you need to be aware that there are companies that are outside the disaster area that specialize in bringing the resources in on an immediate basis. And that's an efficiency issue, and it's also service to the community, both municipalities as well as the private sector. So just be aware. If you're interested, I got the little handouts. Shameless plug over. But I want that mindset, that business model to be more flexible. Also recommend the pre-event contracting solution for that immediate need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Again, I'm Cynthia Johnson from Pinellas County Economic Development. I'm the Center Director for the SBDC. But in my role as the Senior Manager of Economic Development, I did want to share a public-private partnership that has been extremely successful in Pinellas County. It was called the Business Assistance Partnership, where the county partnered with the city and the chamber, and we hired a business specialist that would proactively go out into the community, knock on doors, visit businesses, provide them with information, and find out from them what their issues were. In doing that, they were able to give, we also copied Hillsborough County. We didn't have Burt bags, but we had Ernie bags. So we gave them an Ernie bag on every visit, told them about disaster preparedness, offered assistance of programs and services that they could get, and then used them as a network to then get the messages out. And in Pinellas County, we have 24 municipalities. At one time, I had partnerships with 14 counties and 14 chambers, 14 cities. But the county coordinated the effort, but that person was in that community. And each year, we would service one-on-one over 3,000 businesses in Pinellas County. And that's face-to-face engagement. And we created a network of business assistants where we were able to get out disaster assistance information, and then we were the go-to for finding out information. Yesterday, we talked a lot about communication and how to make that work. That was probably one of the most successful programs we had to cross-pollinate information from the city to the county to our business community. And I do have the program model if anybody was interested.
Thank you. Go ahead, Judy.
I just wanted to add, along those lines, and then also going back to the challenge of reaching out to the small and medium-sized businesses in particular, I keep imagining how much of a challenge that is for the chambers of commerce, because you have so much else you're doing, and then you're also trying to take on that coordinating the discussion around emergency management and coordinating with the public sector on that. And it struck me, the last few comments sort of coalesced for me in just the comment I wanted to make of don't forget, again, representing a disaster recovery contractor myself, part of our goal in business development is to go out and create the relationships, we've all been talking about. So use us for all we're worth. We are so willing to come in and partner with counties, partner with local chambers of commerce, whatever it is, to do trainings, consulting, whatever we can do to help facilitate those relationships. So reach out to those of us who have, you mentioned Agility, Adjusters International, I'm sure there are others in the room, who this is what we do every day. We can help communities, businesses, government entities, whatever, prepare, and we are more than willing to come in and play that role and serve that purpose and take some of that burden off your shoulders. So that is a partnership we're very interested in having, and we welcome the opportunity to engage with your jurisdictions and constituents on doing that.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Simon Bowman. I'm the agribusiness manager for Hillsborough County, and agribusiness has kind of been left out of this discussion, and farmers are business owners as well, small business owners, and probably the best way to reach them isn't through chambers, but through the County Farm Bureau and or the County Extension Office, which is a good way to help, reach them to prepare for a disaster. And although farms typically are pretty self-reliant, they can always look at planning, because they'll be facing, maybe in some cases, total crop failure because of flooding or some other issue.
Thanks. We're going to wrap up here in a minute. I want to hit, though, because we got some folks who are from geographically isolated areas. Dave Andrews has some experience in Alaska. We got some folks here from Mariana Islands. We've got John Scott from Monroe County in Key West. Are there any successes or failures that we can take from situations where you've had, where the businesses you've got are the businesses you've got? I mean, you got to deal with what you have on hand, and those businesses have to deal with the ones that are nearby. Are there any things any lessons we could take from Alaska or Mariana Islands or Key West that we could extrapolate and use across the rest of the state? Any thoughts? Or John or Dave? John, you got anything? You don't have to. If you don't have anything, just I don't have anything. I just wondered.
One of the things that we've been successful with, and we're growing our ESF-18 initiative, but we're a small community. We're a very long, we're 126 miles of islands. But we work very closely with our Rotary groups. We're very active rotarians, and they're usually also very active with chambers. So that is sort of the way in which we're engaging with them right now. We're getting them more and more involved. And like I spoke about yesterday, we work very closely with our tourism folks, and our hotel motel folks. Our tourism and hotel motel folks have an annual hurricane conference, which we speak at, and several other community groups speak at. And so it's a constant dialogue, and because we are such a small community, we really focus on a one-on-one interaction. And that seems to work for us. I don't know about others.
So I understand the focus on trying to spend money in your local communities and bring back and engage the smaller businesses, but I do want to remind people that large publicly traded companies, S&P 500, do have a number of services they can provide. And as an example, Microsoft, who's involved with RISE, and I know this, Microsoft has a team that, as an example, right after the Seattle mudslides, the community that got wiped out, they dropped a team in. Once the declaration was made, they had Microsoft professionals who dropped into that community and provided all of the IT infrastructure, everything from people finders so people could actually find who was missing and who wasn't. They were able to pull up a lot of the documents related to the properties, et cetera, and they have a dedicated team that's all they do. So they'll drop in. I was with a guy one day, and he had 4 separate things across the globe, and they were standing up teams. Their mandate is to do this within 6 to 8 hours of a disaster declaration being made. So I would tend to take a top-down approach, look at the S&P 500 companies, see who is out there, and possibly think about ways you can actually engage with larger companies.
Good. Thanks.
In Broward County, we are actually working on a whole community resiliency project that is ESF 18 centric. And a part of that project involves a mentorship between some of our larger businesses, mentoring like industry, smaller to medium-sized businesses. And we've actually have a commitment from Citrix, for an example, who has started, and I'm partial to training. So the gap that a lot of our small businesses in the county have identified for their business continuity purposes is they know that they need to be taught how to do it. They need to have these plans. It's just not always easy for them to get away to a training in the traditional setting. So our partner at Citrix has done a training module through webinar that he's recorded, and we have made it available to those smaller and medium-sized businesses, and we're going to start a library of that sort of thing to make it easier and more accessible to them. And we've also talked with our friend over there at Verizon about doing something similar. Gotcha. To make it easier for them to do that. So we are excited about the mentorship program, because they'll take the information better from them than they will from us telling them they need to have it. And the training module actually goes through how to develop it, the components of it, and what you need to do.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, here's what we're going to do then. Since we're kind of, as Tom mentioned, bleeding into the next section, we'll just take a break, and then we'll come back and kind of continue the conversation, because the next conversation is our private sector liaison program at the local, state, and federal level, which is discussing how it is that government can help facilitate some of the things that we've discussed there, how we can facilitate the relationships, the information flow, et cetera. So we'll break now, and we'll start again at